You know, since you guys didn't leave, maybe you're stuck, like like Danny and Shane, but you know, it doesn't matter. You're here. I'll tell you, because it just came up as we're talking to Kamran. One of my most preferred dua that has shielded me and I would say protected me in life and is a dua of Nur, which the Prophet ﷺ used to say, Allahum maj'al li nura. Allah, give me a light. Allow me to emit light. اللهم اجعل في عيني نورا وفي عقلي نورا وفي قلبي نورا. Allah, make there a light present in my eyes, in my intellect, in my heart. واجعل من فوقي نورا ومن تحتي نورا, and make there a light that surrounds me, above me and under me. ومن حولي نورا, and around me, encircle me. اللهم اجعلني نورا. Allah, transform me into a light. That's a very powerful diet piece of the way I've experienced it. And every time I say it, which is pretty much several times a day, it's as if you feel like that the atmosphere around you resonates and responds. For those of you that are thinking of tazkiyah and what tazkiyah entails, you know, you want the light of the divine in the same way that Allah created the light that was the source of life. Because without the light, there would have been no life, no consciousness, no nafs. We don't know what the light wara al-hujub is. We don't know what the light in the plane of other than our material world, because you know, like our material world is a dimension, but we don't know the nature of that light beyond our dimension. But the light that Allah gave us on this here, that has been the source of life, what you want is a soul that is attracted by everything that is luminous and repelled by everything that is dark. That's what you aspire for. You don't want to even covet what is dark or desire what is dark, or you know, that's your supplication to Allah.
It's the Dua al Nur.
I mean, it's longer than that. If you look it up, you'll find it. But that's, yeah, I mean, that's enough. I mean, that's the most, I've, of course, I've changed it a little bit so that it's more, so it's, you know, for instance, when you look up the tradition, it doesn't say نجعل في عقلي في عيني نورا وفي عقلي نورا وفي قلبي نورا. But it's something I picked up from somewhere else. I don't even remember which book, and it just remained with me.
So one thing I have gotten used to noting when I read the Quran is when Allah changes, I guess, when He changes from third to first person. So I noticed in verses 13 and 14, so 13 He refers to Himself in the first person plural, and then the very next ayah He refers to Himself in the first person singular. And so I've gotten used to kind of picking that out, because I know when I first converted, that was one thing that I was like, wait, why are the persons flipping? And so I'm curious if there was a reason why in this case, like, the personhood with which Allah speaks of Himself flips?
That's really a good question. Okay, so the plural is صيغة التفخيم. The plural is when you refer to the I in the plural as the we, it's either a way to be formal or a way to underscore. So if you know, like in French, like when you say vous instead of tu. Yeah. So it's a way to be formal or of a way of underscoring the grandeur of the me.
Like muaddim?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the Quran consistently, when Allah is referring to an elevated concept, an elevated creation, like guidance, like light, like huda, Allah uses the plural. And a lot of commentators said Allah uses the plural when Allah refers to things that are worthy of respect and reverence. And then when referring to punishment, degradation, hellfire, Allah uses a singular. It's like, well, you know, it's not proper to use the grandeur, the term of respect and grandeur for something that is punishment. So that is why the switch from to the singular, but we see it in the pattern throughout the Quran. Yeah, I mean, there are other interesting things, like when Allah also notes something that this comes from people like Jilani and Ibn Arabi. When Allah notes something that is observable by the naked eye, in other words, it is in our experience. So Allah, for instance, refers to the mountains. Well, we all saw the mountains. So Allah uses the we. Ibn Arabi says in direct proportion and relation to the plural in us. It's as if Allah said. But then when Allah is referring to something that we have not experienced, like hellfire, base things, Allah uses a singular.
So basically elevated things, concepts, we sort of base.
It's
base. I didn't catch that.
Then,
regarding duha, we know that Quran many times use that with duha, wa duha wa layli shamsi wa duhaha, and we know it from our tradition that Salat al Duha is one of the voluntary prayer of duha. I remember reading somewhere that before the 5 prayer was revealed to Muhammad, Muhammad used to pray duha and asr, or some say fajr and asr instead of duha and asr.
yeah.
And duha is not an issue for the Jahiliyyah at the time, the Meccan at the time, because they used to pray duha too.
Yeah.
And they have problem with asr. That's why they have to hide if they want to pray asr, because they ask why they pray asr, not duha. So what is your opinion about the validity of that, the historical?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really interesting question. Yeah, we have all these reports about the reverence of duha among pre-Islamic Arabs, that duha, especially the sunrise, that they would perform not just the prayers, but they would perform sacrifices, that they would circumambulate around the Kaaba beginning of duha, and also we know from pre-Islamic poetry that there was a sense of the night, and the descent of the night was considered a bad omen, while the rise of the sun was considered a good omen, and that's a good time to pray. Interestingly, the practitioners of black magic, and especially those who would cast envy spells, like jealousy spells, it would always be done. Part of that he always cast it at night among pre-Islamic Arabs. Yeah, I mean, and that they're scandalized by. I mean, of course, the reports are incomplete. I have to say, because they're scandalized by, according to these reports, that they're scandalized by us. But I've also read that they were very unhappy about praying at night, which they thought was highly inappropriate. And we know that there are reports that the Prophet ﷺ would, before the revelation, would volunteer to pray either at Fajr or Duha, perhaps even both, that he would regularly pray at sunrise, and that he would pray late in the night. We don't know what form his prayers took, other than we know that they involved sujood, because we have these reports that say that they saw the Prophet in the state of sujood, and even attacked him when he's in the state of sujood, and so on. What in Near Eastern cultures, even in among ancient pharaonic culture, even outside of Arabia, even among the Sumerians, the relationship to the sun and moon, and the movement and the associating of the rise of the sun and this period where the sun rises to its zenith with good things is something that we see in Near Eastern cultures throughout. Did that in some way, or in one way or another, influence the Quranic revelation? Well, to the extent that the Quran was talking to people in a language that they understood, that it wanted to get them to reflect on some things that meant something to them. I mean, I am sure if the Quran was revealed today, it would somehow find a way to talk about the net and electricity, and but the part where I find very disappointing is that when then these modern day /secular /atheist so-called Muslims, or if they're even Muslim at all anymore, I see them particularly in the Arab world, Syrians, Egyptians, and so on, that want to say, well, the Quran was thoroughly Arab, and they try to impeach the sanctity and divinity of the Quran that way. I just don't see it making a big deal about that the Arabs revered al-Duha, and that the Quran talks of al-Duha. It's like saying, well, modern man reveres the net, and then the Quran, if it was revealed today, talks about the net. Well, of course, it's going to talk about what means something. But I think that's also why the Quran was very understandable to them. Why, when it alerted them to, there's an intricate balance, and a lot of Near Eastern religion, I'm sure, as I know, would revere the sun, and in fact make the sun a sort of deity, or especially the sun, and then to a lesser extent the moon, or a smaller degree the moon. But when the Quran sort of does a paradigm shift and comes and says, this is not about the sun as a maker. This is about the world of the created and the world of the uncreated, the first cause. As long as something is created, it cannot be worshipped. And as long as it's within your physical realm, it cannot be deified. I think that's the important part. But it's, I mean, it's interesting. You know, it's really, I've been reading these days. I've got very interested in Near Eastern, ancient Near Eastern cultures before Islam, and I was trying to figure out what religions prevailed where and what they exactly believed in. It is so difficult. I mean, you read an enormous amount of contradictory material. A lot of the history relies on, you know, bits, very fragmented pieces of evidence, and then a great deal of interpretive acts. So, I mean, it's fascinating that you raise that, because I was reading a lot about ancient traditions and the deification of the sun and the role that the sun played and so on. But yeah.
Are we still asking questions about Surah Layl, or are we moving to Shams, or either or?
Either or.
I guess I had two, in Doha you talked about Nafsan being, I guess, the self and the consciousness, and the debate between whether, I guess it kind of reminded me of the concept of Kesb from the Maturidi. So is it that, because I guess I from the Maturidi perspective, from what I understand, is that Allah gives, I guess, the capacity each upon, I guess, willing, gives the human being the capacity to do either good or evil. Is I know there's some debate about that, or with among the theologians, but how, I guess, how do we talk about that, I guess, in sort of modern terms? Because I feel like the problem of evil is one of the, if not the most serious sort of theological sort of, I guess, I don't know, test, conflict. And I say serious in the sense of, like, a lot of the materialist science crap is, like, not, like, they totally missed the question. And I guess, like, my second question is, you know, when I converted to Islam, one of the things that I don't know if I can even say this, but it was a little, the dark-light dichotomy was a little disappointing for me, because I'm a dark-skinned person, and I know, like, in relatively dark, at least in this country, and like, I knew as a Catholic that one of the, I guess, the reasons why is because of missed sort of application of that dark light dichotomy to, like, a sort of phenotypic appearance. And so I guess the question that I had when I converted to Islam and I was reading this is like, okay, I get why Allah is using that and I get that imagery, but, like, could there have been another way to talk about it?
I mean, you know, you raise us, you know, because
Why dark is bad?
Yeah, like, why is, you know, you talk about black magic. I'm just like, man, like, I get it, but, like,
yeah, you know, I've been fascinated by this question as well, you know, over a long time, because, you know, we can't deny that we you know, we, even by our very nature, when you know, a child is young and they sleep in a very dark room, they react to that, and what is it that they want? They'll request some light, you know. But I think this, when I was preparing for that course, Muslims, Race and Law, I read a great deal about the social construction of race. And I really think that even that it is a thoroughly artificially constructed idea that someone like you is dark, as instead of someone other than you is pale. I mean, why are brown-skinned people just described as dark? I mean, you know, when I was growing up, there was a song by Abdul Halim Hafiz, a famous Egyptian singer, said Asmar ya Samara. Yeah, Asmar. Basically, if you're like dark skinned, it sang about how like beautiful dark skin, the Sumra are, the dark skin, And
Is that brown skin or dark skin?
it's Asmar is sort of like darker
Dark
skinned.
olive. I
Okay.
used to get mad
Olive.
when I used to hear this.
Tan.
No, seriously, I'm
But
like,
you
why
see-
don't
Wheat
you
color,
sing
like-
about fair people ever?
Yeah, it's like my sister,
variation.
my sister
Okay.
and my
Yeah.
brother are dark skinned, and so like my sister always like loved the song because she always
was
thought
dark,
that it's
yeah.
about but and that's actually growing up the idea of a samra. And even in Arabic poetry, they was supposed to be some mark of beauty or paleness. Now, of course, at the same time, we can't deny that there's this that from places like I've learned through interaction with people from India and Kashmir that if you're fairer skinned, you're considered somehow more.
Yeah.
How did human beings, does it have anything to do with what was that called, the biblical curse?
The curse of Ham.
The curse of Ham. As some have argued that the genesis of this is the theology of the curse of Ham. Some of the most fascinating material that if Allah gave me the energy and the time, I would love to collect all the material in which Muslims, darker skinned Muslims, were interacting with Europeans and encountering Kurds and Turks and commenting about their pale skin. I mean, sort of quite often negatively, because that's a lost part of our history that has been completely overshadowed by the racial categories. So, I mean, I think the problem is to associate or connect in our consciousness brown-skinned people with darkness. I think, if we've gotten to a point where you can't use the word retard without it being offensive, right? Why aren't we elevating our language? I mean, these remarkably offensive racial categories need to be challenged. So I completely relate, and I understand but I think it's not. It's.
Yeah, I don't think Allah's a racist or anything like that.
I mean,
Right.
it's like the bottom line is he created the colors. I mean, it's from Allah. It's like if Allah would have all wanted to create us all pale skinned, Allah could have done it. But what the issue about kasban. Well, the debate. Okay, so one position is that Allah creates the good and the evil, and you are fated to walk the path, and that's a very problematic.
Yeah.
The middle ground, before we get to the other position, the middle ground is that Allah creates a potentiality, and then your will acquires the act, and that's sort of kasb. But we still have the problem with evil, because how does Allah, would the just God create the potentiality for evil? I mean, so either you're going to rape and kill this child, or you're not going to rape and kill this child, and then Allah creates both possibilities, and then you acquire the act. But there's a problem. If Allah created,
Would you acquire the act, or do you acquire the potential to do the acts? Because I think there's a difference.
yeah, there's that is a different. I mean, that is an important distinction, because one might solve the problem of evil and the other might not.
Because I heard the Asharis, well, it depends. They say you acquire the acts, whereas the Maturidis are
The
like, you
Maturidis
acquire
are
the
the
potential to
potential.
do the
Yeah.
act.
Yeah, I mean, I like or I'm convinced of the position of someone like Mullah Sadr, who says Allah creates the potential for goodness, but does not create the evil, or even the potential for evil, but simply that you, by failing to do what is good, you degrade or descend or deteriorate into evil. I mean, theoretically, why would the biggest problem they have is that they don't want to concede. They say, how could it be, if you say that Allah didn't create it, then Allah is ignorant of the future. And I don't see that as a problem, because if something doesn't exist, then it is not ignorance to not know it. If it hasn't unfolded. So so then they say, well, so are you saying that Allah, when someone is born, Allah doesn't know if this person will go to heaven or hell? My response is, yes, Allah doesn't know, because there's nothing to know until actually the actions are unfold and take place. And to try to say that Allah creates someone and then Allah knows whether this person is going to end up in heaven and hell from the moment of creation, there is no way, regardless of the intellectual gymnastics, that you get around the problem of evil. I mean, so I know that right now in modern Islam, you would say that's a minority view. I would concede that. But I believe that's the only view that would make sense of so much of what is in the Quran. And that dignifies us with ultimate responsibility for our own actions, and answers, it's completely understandable that potential for so much, the potential for creating so much good would not have been possible if the opposite didn't exist. But that doesn't mean that Allah then creates the opposite.
Is this like, because I know the Maturidi school sort of rose in Central Asia. There's a lot of Zoroastrianism, so they've got a dualistic view. Is this like I want to say like a historical relic, but does this come, or does this have something to do? Do you think this is this sort of theological position is maybe a result of the interaction with certain Zoroastrian communities in sort of reconciling the notion of like a good God and an evil God? Because I mean, that's how the Zoroastrians reconcile that.
I mean, what's really interesting is, okay,
I don't know if anybody else knows.
in Islamic theology, it is believed that Zoroastrianism started out through one of Allah's Anbiya. I forgot his name. That Zoroastrianism was...
Zoroastrian?
Yeah,
Zarathustra. Zarathustra. Yeah.
That he's a prophet, and that he gave them the message of Tawheed, and that the corruption of Tawheed came from the God of evil and the God of good, which, and then they're battling it out and the struggle. I mean, then we come the closest to that was the idea in some forms of Christianity, especially early Christianity, that Satan rebels against God, could acquire powers that could actually defy God. Is Zoroastrian influence? I mean, Zoroastrianism has influenced so much in Islam because of the porous boundaries between the two. But I don't know if that part can be said to be, because Muslim theologians explicitly, the ones who insisted that God does not create evil, would explicitly rebut Zoroastrianism. They're very aware of it, and they cite it, and they often discuss, the views of Zoroastrians, Jews, and Christians, and then, so of course, it is possible to say, well, even if they are rebutting it, but they still were influenced by the notion. Maybe, I mean, but what I understand from the text of the Quran as something that relates to me as a Muslim, is that it alerts me and anchors me in my potential to create so much beauty. And it's same time reminds me that I'm going to be held accountable if I produce ugliness instead of beauty. Now, from a practical point of view, you could say, it doesn't matter other than the fact that I want to avoid the horrible fate. So, all of this stuff is like very abstract because, and even the man who came to the Prophet said, so I actually, I started saying this hadith and I don't think I ever completed it. The man who came to the Prophet and said, and so this is the report, it goes like this. So the man asked the Prophet, so does this mean that we are, if Allah says, does this mean we are created for heaven or for hell? And the Prophet reportedly answers, yes, you are created for heaven and for hell. And then the man says, well, so what is the point of doing good deeds? And then reportedly the Prophet says, well, the reason is لِكَيْ تَعْلَمْ, so that you will come to know. So in other words, you'll come to know whether you were created for heaven and hell. Now, of course, I don't think this report is authentic, but they often cite it with Surah al-Tazkiyah. And it's often cited in these debates about kasb and so on. It's like, well, as far as you're concerned, you don't know whether you were created for heaven and hell, but I guess you'll find out through your deeds. As a practical matter, it's a very theoretical thing, because it's like, okay, fine, if it's for me just to discover my fate, I want to discover that I'm going to heaven. Although, I mean, my theology, I have to tell you, my conception of true grace is to return to the divine and see the divine. I mean, I think all the material, I think that heaven and hell don't follow the laws of physics that exist in this world. And it's a completely different world that we will not understand unless it's too late, because we died and we got stuck somewhere as a ghost. Or we die and then we wake up and it's the hereafter, and if we're lucky we don't get stuck somewhere, because that's a horrible thing. But then I think that we will be introduced to a completely different universe than the physical laws that we know. So I want the blessing of coming to know the divine, not the material enjoyments of heaven. I know that's not part of the question, but I just, and at the same time, I don't, I have nothing against people who say, no, I want the material enjoyments of heaven. I mean, the Allah that created the consciousness, Allah will enable you to experience whatever Allah wants you to experience and you want.
Any more questions? About the purification. Earlier, Professor was talking about purification. Yeah, I was wondering, how do you do it, or how does one do that?
Okay, there are two ways for tazkiyah. The best way is to do it with a mentor, because a mentor who knows how to do tazkiyah, because it's much harder to do it by yourself. But assuming that a mentor doesn't exist, I mean, a mentor, when a mentor says you have to do 50 rakahs, or by the end of the day, you say Subhanallah, bihamdi, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk, 1,000 times. When you have to report to someone, it's much more effective. But in the absence of a mentor, here's the core elements of tazkiyah. The core elements of tazkiyah is that you recall your sin You're called and you, between you and Allah, some people say that you actually write. And actually that's the school I follow, that you actually write down all your sins. You write them. Of course, only Allah will absolve you of the sins, but tawbah and tazkiyah is very hard if you don't confront your sins first. And recalling them is taking responsibility for them. And admitting them without excuses before Allah is the first important steps in tazkiyah. So that's the one of the basic essential steps. The second step, they say that, and in practice I would say that that's true. The best tazkiyah is done while fasting. So if you are in a major momentum for tazkiyah, to elevate yourself, fast as much as you can fast. Third, you are closest to Allah when you are in a state of sujood. So after each salah, remain in a state of sujood, and you do the salah, and then you stay in sujood for as long as you can handle it, and while in sujood, say, Subhanakallah wa bihamdik, astaghfirak wa atubu ilayk. Like from Surah al Nur, جاء نصر الله والفتح, or إذا جاء نصر الله والفتح ورأيت الناس يدخلون في دين الله أفواجا فسبح بحمد ربك واستغفره إنه كان توابا. فسبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أستغفرك وأتوب إليك while you're in a state of sujood. These are the first important core elements. You can then, the next step after addressing your sins, after fasting and doing sujood as much as you can, and assuming, of course, that your health is okay to fast, because I wouldn't tell someone to fast if their health doesn't allow them to do that. Then even if you look up, this is again in the absence of a mentor. You look up the dua, and nowadays it's far more accessible than it used to be. That the Prophet ﷺ used to repeat because the Prophet ﷺ had a dua when he woke up, had a dua when he would eat, had a dua when he would see the sun setting, had a dua before he would sleep, had a dua when he would go to the bathroom, and had a dua where, there are all these, and as much of that dua that you can repeat. At the beginning, of course, you don't have it memorized, so at the beginning you're looking it up, and okay, so shuruq, okay, the Prophet's dua was, and then you read it. But eventually, this dua, now if you follow that with persistence, you are in the path to ultimate elevation. And don't forget Dua al Nur, because then even people, you see people around you say, you look like you're glowing. Of course, if what shuyukh do is that they'll say, okay, now do iqamah, and so iqamat al-layl, and so you pray Isha and you stay in a state of zikr from Isha and Fajr. That's sort of the hardcore training. That's sort of the really rigorous training word. But that's not for everyone, and it's not intended like for. And even like my mother would always give this advice. She'd say, even if you can't, like if a lot of the shuyukh told you do dhikr from Isha to Fajr. Well, even if you can do dhikr just for 15 minutes after Isha, 15 minutes before Fajr, that's a big step forward. I mean, it's like saying to Allah, I'm here. Uzkuruni azkurkum. Uzkuruni azkurkum. We hear this a lot and we repeat it a lot. We don't pause to think about it. Iskuruni askurkum. You remember me, I will remember you. And so in many ways, I had one of my teachers would say, he would say it half joking, but I know that he also meant it. There are so many people on this earth, right? And they all make noise. Everyone is making noise, and it's like when someone is doing tazkiyah, it's like saying to Allah, notice me, because I'm not satisfied with just being just going about like everyone else. I want to be really close to you. What I want is my relationship to you, not everything else that surrounds me. And Allah does answer. I mean, that I can say with absolute certitude. If you seriously seek, at first it goes slow in terms of Allah's response, but then when Allah's response comes, you're moving in leaps and bounds. It's no longer just, I just want my bad dreams to stop. It becomes a completely different dynamic where you literally can feel like you're knocking at Allah's door in an instant over, like something happened right now. Okay, I'm gonna knock at the door and I'm gonna get a response. Persistence. So many people in my lifetime, they start and then they get bored. So many people. I mean, and even you've seen even in our Halaqa, so many people, would come at the beginning for a bit and then they disappear. That's the nature of human beings. We are restless, and we're like a more elevated or civilized version of bees around, what do you call it? A hive. Constantly buzzing around and moving and making a lot of noise and effort to slow down and to say, no, that's not enough for me. That's really what tazkiyah is about. And being transparent with yourself and with Allah about your failures and your shortcomings. And especially, this is one of my teachers say, I just remember this, Sheikh Khaled would say, the first thing you confront yourself about are the untruth. We human beings are not truthful about a lot of things, and we are very good at ignoring our lack of truthfulness. When you start confronting yourself by, okay, what are the ways that I am not truthful about everything? That's the first step towards a dynamic. Because if you think of how much of our life we rely on lying, and lying to others, lying to ourselves, lying, and especially lying to ourselves, yeah, that's enough so I don't complicate more things for me.
When you're doing the sujood and the dhikr, do you, I mean, you can do it in Arabic and in English, or your own language. Is there a difference in like the power of it, or
Yeah, that's a really good question. Is there a difference in the power? Yes, but is there a difference in is it both effective in both? Yes. In other words, if you can't relate to the Arabic, do it in English, because authenticity and sincerity is far more important. The language of the Quran itself has a power to it, but that's a higher level. In other words, first you start out just by being truthful and sincere about even the language that you're using. So when you say, praise Allah, you actually mean it. Because we say praise Allah, Allahu Akbar or Subhanallah all the time, but we don't really mean it. What does it mean? Praise Allah. What are you actually praising for? What is your relationship to Allah? So use whatever. Then when it comes to the power of language itself, it's something else. I mean, I'll tell you that the sounds of words, and it's subhanAllah, is not just in, you find it in a lot of, I don't know why Semitic languages, why Arabic and Hebrew especially, or Aramaic, I don't know, but I know that they're very effective against demons, for instance. But that's something you don't need to worry about. You know, if you were telling me I want to cleanse a space from demons, I would say use the Arabic, don't use English translations. But if you're just cleansing yourself, then you don't need to worry about chasing away demons or bringing angels. It seems I don't know why, but definitely the barakah seems to, the energy of a place seems to resonate with Semitic languages. I'm not, again, I don't, it's like one of the things like why Allah did you create that? Why Hebrew? Why Arabic? Why Aramaic? What's so special about it? We'll never know. We will never be able to answer. I mean, and Persians get really upset because it's like, okay, why not Persian?
It's the monotheistic faiths, right? Aramaic.
Yeah, but you note that like Allah, like the Abrahamic religion was sent through these Semitic languages. And although of course the Prophet to
Zarathustra.
Yeah,
Zarathustra.
it seems like he was sent in Persian. Allah Alam, but that's that's something for cleansing or for tazkiyah. I mean, if the English means more to you, use the English. So as well to get it so that your heart feels it.
Last question.
Oh, that's a very short question. Is it true that angels like good smells, whether it's incense or good smell? Like, do they come towards that? Like, if you have...
Yeah, they do. The bukhur. It's very interesting. Scents do chase away demons and do attract angels, but no amounts of scents will attract angels to an unblessed place or a place in which there is sin. And it's really interesting because, I've seen, there are demons that defy sage, so there seems to be levels of demons, some that will actually laugh at the idea that you're trying to chase someone away with sage. While it seems like lower level demons in their hierarchy find sage for what, it's part of Allah's creation. Allah created that plant that is able to, but so some people, definitely among Sufi shuyukh, like when they do dhikr, they like to turn on incense. And it is effective. It has a power because it's the sense of smell is very important, and it both elevates you and the space, but it's not. It's only if that's something you want to do. It's not a make it or break it thing. Other type of questions.
I just have a follow-up question. Is this sage thing, the smells, it's more like an aromatherapy kind of thing, like how some classical music have a calming effect into people?
No,
or is it really like chasing away demons, like demons?
No, sage in particular for centuries have been used to attempt to purify spaces, but when it's used by someone who's blessed, it has a very different power than if it's used by the morons that use it on TV.
They use sage on TV?
Yeah, a lot of the ghost shows.
I've been in a silo, man. I have no idea.
Because it's very easy to hide or to even just step out. Like they go, we'll sage the house. Well, do you really think the demon is so sort of? They'll just step out of the house until the smoke goes away, and then come right back. You know, it's not a big deal. But you know, and, among the lost. I'm not telling you to watch this because I actually think it has a bad influence. There's a documentary done by Zach Bagans, I think, called Hell House, where he bought this house that was demonically infested, and it's a really cursed house. I mean, but of course, you know, he tries to cleanse it and then at the end he gives up and tears the house down and has it buried in the desert. Why did I bring that up?
Sage.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, it's sort of like it's amazing because the way that the modern mind is disconnected from the tradition. Wow, there's so much in the tradition that could even help us appreciate nature, understand the importance of the nature, value nature, listen to nature. I mean, who even remembers the art of listening to nature anymore? You know, that when Allah tells us that everything in life does tasbih, among the greatest blessings, and this is like the aqtab, the shuyukh of very high stature, they can hear the tasbih of nature. They can hear the sounds of supplication. That's a huge blessing, you know. But so much of us don't get. You know, we think nature is mute, and that we can do whatever we want to nature. You know, destroy it, ruin it, pollute it, and it's just there. Just completely it's very demonic. I mean, it is very demonic to do that.
So basically Francis Bacon. That's what I mean. The idea.
Yeah, it does.
It's my philosopher nerdy self.
Yeah, you know, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. Alhamdulillah.